The Bitcoin game is sponsored by eToro. eToro was founded in 2007. They launched Bitcoin trading in 2013. And they are one of the largest trading platforms in the world. eToro has really started supporting Bitcoin media, such as my podcast, and Bitcoin conferences recently. So check them out at b.tc/eToro game. That's b.tc/eToro game. Hello, welcome to episode 71 of the Bitcoin Game. I'm Rob Mitchell. I met Brian Lockhart at Bitcoin 2019 this past summer while having lunch. He sat down next to me and kind of said, "You look familiar," and that was how we met. Brian recently joined the team at Casa, which happens to have just released details on their Node 2. So this seemed like the perfect time to have Brian as a guest. I learned a lot from Brian, including how Bitcoin got on his radar, his 5-year Bitcoin Rip Van Winkle experience, and, of course, the Casa Node 2. We even review some recently highlighted security trade-offs with the node, and I discuss my own case of lightning fever. If you've ever wanted to know more about Brian Lockhart or the Casa Node, this episode is for you. Here we go. Brian.
Hey, Rob. Good to see you again, or not see you, but talk to you.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
It was great to meet you at Bitcoin 2019.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was a good conference. That was perfect timing for me to get down there. I had at the time, my job, I had a alignment with a work trip, so it just worked out perfectly. I was already in town.
Okay, and that was great, not just because almost everyone there being a Bitcoiner, but we had that massive pump, like, just in conjunction.
Oh, I know. That was crazy, like 13 something. And then, it felt a little frothy, and sure enough, it did come back down.
Yeah, but it is made for good moods. And
yeah.
It's funny, I was just at a local conference, and I actually don't go to conferences much, but there's one here in LA, and I'm often too lazy to even do that. But it was not a Bitcoin conference, and it's just such a different thing.
Yeah, I find myself not going to many conferences, but the ones I do are very Bitcoin centric, and so that really does narrow it down. Like I go to the BitBlock Boom conference down in Dallas. I've been to both of those. That's been a lot of fun. And I went to Latin American Bitcoin conference a couple of years ago down in Bogota, Colombia. That was a lot of fun as well. But the rest of them, I think they're a little too broad for my tastes, and they're very Ethereum focused. And I feel that there's enough to cover in Bitcoin that I'd rather just stay focused on that. So that limits my conference attendance.
Sure. You've always kind of struck me as very relatable as someone who did not come from like a libertarian perspective.
Yeah, you're right. I was not very politically inclined in any direction. And it's one of those things where, as with other aspects of Bitcoin, I think I discovered, hey, guess what? I guess I am a libertarian. I just didn't realize that the things I personally believed in tended to align with a lot of the libertarian ideals. And so it's like you start checking the boxes and talking to hardcore libertarians, and you realize, I guess I am one of you guys a little bit. You know, I don't self-identify as a libertarian, but I wouldn't shy away from the description.
Yeah, and it is an interesting thing because I hear, obviously people are like, as more and more mainstream people get into Bitcoin, that's going to kind of reduce the amount of the political views that were responsible for Bitcoin. But it also goes the other way in that Bitcoin, I think, maybe sways people's political views. And I don't know if people give that credit.
Yeah, I think at a high level, to the extent you believe that government in general is just a misallocation of resources for the public and is just generally not incentivized to be a net positive. The more you believe in that, the more you're queued up to be aligned with Bitcoin and other people in the space. And so it's interesting to see how, yeah, you're right. As we get more mainstream adoption, you're going to attract people that don't believe in that, and they are, the dirty word that gets flung around is statists. It's like, oh man, we're going to get more statists coming on board, and I think that I have faith that as they get more interested in Bitcoin and read about it and learn what is sound money and why Bitcoin's a good example of it and why do we need sound money, and then after that, like, oh, wait a minute, that is not what fiat is at all. That's not sound money. Well, how did we get here? Oh, that's because of government. And then you can walk this path that Bitcoin might lead you along, and then you realize, oh, geez, I guess there's something to these libertarians.
So your path, I'm curious what, even way back to your youth, like, do you have any early things that kind of directed you toward Bitcoin, you think?
Yeah, I think I got pretty just naturally aligned on a path where I was going to collide with Bitcoin no matter what. We were just on paths where it would have been nearly impossible for me to not discover it at some point. I started off as a kid, um, interested in electronic gadgets and mechanical gadgets too. I love tearing apart my bicycle and putting it back together and just fixing stuff and playing with mechanical things. And then I like to play in video games. And I remember one day my dad brought home a TRS-80, one of the cassette deck loaded computer systems where you could learn a little bit about computer programming.
Yeah, Radio Shack, right?
Exactly, Radio Shack TRS-80. And you had to, you'd connect a TV to it, and I had a keyboard and a cassette deck, and you would literally, if you wanted to save your program, was typing it all in, you had to record it to cassette tape, and then you could load it back. And that was the first time I ever got a look at what it took to program a computer. And back then you had to type it in line by line. It was basic, I believe. And, at first you're just typing it in, not really understanding what it is you're doing. And if you make a mistake, it doesn't work. And so, but then once you get it all in there right and you run it, oh, geez, I've got this cool game. And then for me, that wasn't enough. Like, playing the game was great, but if I wanted to play a game, there's way easier ways to do it. What got me hooked was, oh, now I can fiddle with it. If I change this line, it changes that color. Oh, okay. If I change this line, oh, no, it won't work at all. If I change this line, there's more enemies on the screen. I figured it out that way, just kind of kludging around in the code and figuring that stuff out. And that set me off on a path. Then got through school, learned more software development languages. I ended up getting a dual major in finance and computer science in undergrad.
Ah, perfect. Wow.
Yeah. So and at this point, I still had not discovered, well, this is before Bitcoin. I'm a little older than a lot of folks. But at one point, I was on a path to be what is now called a quant, like go work back east on high frequency trading systems. And in fact, in grad school, I had a thesis project that was working towards that goal. And long story short, I ended up selling that program that I had written to a now defunct brokerage firm back east that got taken out in the '09 meltdown. But at the time, they made me a really good offer I couldn't refuse. That was a financial package and a job offer. I ended up taking the financial package, but not the job offer. Then I was faced with the decision: do I stay in school and re-up my thesis, or do I bail and take other job offers, which had started to come in too? And long story short on that is I ended up going up to Microsoft up here in Seattle, where I've been since then.
What was the specialty of the software? Like, why did people want this?
It was covered call index options, making buy and sell recommendations, and this was new at the time. It's pretty commonplace now, and it's gotten down to a commodity. But back then, traders on floors were literally just making gut check calls on the percentage in or out of the money and time to expiration on index option covered call positions. And so my professor and I at the time had a theory that you could take an existing, I guess I call it an algorithm, Black-Scholes, which is a way you could evaluate an equity. But no one had thought at the time to apply that same algo to an option. And we've reasoned that there was really no reason that it shouldn't work. And so we ended up getting some funding, getting actual data on every options trade that had been made to that point. This arrives on huge reel-to-reel tapes at the time, and we had it loaded up on mainframe and supercomputers all over the country just to run the simulations I wanted to run. And we determined that yes, absolutely, you could use Black-Scholes, and if people had used the recommendations that Black-Scholes algorithm had put out at the time, they would have made X amount more profit in their trades. And so that was my thesis project. And so once you have something like that rolling, the people that funded the data acquisition that we needed to test this, they knew that once I published this as a thesis, it would be public domain and anyone could have it, and they didn't want that. So they basically just bought it out from under me because they wanted it for themselves.
Interesting. And it's funny because I just looked up Black-Scholes because Trace Mayer had mentioned it being some really important thing. I was like, oh, I got to look this up.
Yeah, it's a super common thing. And like this was just an example of my professor had the theory. He was the financial guru. I was a student of his. And I was the only student in his class that was also a dual major in computer science. And so he had an idea, but he didn't have the technical chops to actually test it. And so he asked me, he said, hey, well, how hard would it be to prove this out programmatically? And I said, probably not that hard. Let's figure that out. And that was it.
Nice, nice. Okay, so that got you to Microsoft.
That got me to Microsoft, and it was funny. I went from being like completely aimed at a career in financial programming, quantitative analytics. I went the complete other way, and I went to Microsoft, and I wanted to work. I'd made the decision that I wasn't really enamored with finance and that whole world at all, and I wanted to. And at that time, the internet was really starting to take off in the world of normal people. So this is think back to like 1992, 3, 4, and the world had started to go from email addresses back then were only held by nerds. And so I could email, but I was only emailing with other computer science nerds. And then all of a sudden I see like my sister and her friends, they're getting email addresses, and America Online and CompuServe are really starting to take off, and people are getting on the standard internet. Microsoft Windows had a add-on stack you could add to it that would let you get TCP/IP on Windows. And this is back when before that you had to dial in with a modem to get on the internet. And all of a sudden I could just see that the internet was becoming a lot more mainstream. And I knew that was going to be a big tipping point for technology and the world. And I reasoned that if I wanted to be a part of that space, there's few better places on earth to go than Microsoft, just as being able to have impact at scale. I knew that if I aligned with the right company and the right team, I would be able to impact a lot more people positively and make technology available to a much broader set of people. So I chose Microsoft. And when I first got there, I ended up working on pretty nascent stuff at the time. Like it's laughable today to think about how common it is to get your news on the internet. But back then, like CNN.com was coming up. Microsoft had a joint venture with NBC, and that turned into MSNBC, which still lives today as a TV network and a website. But we helped build the MSNBC.com news website. I was working on it from a back-end perspective on making the web server side of it a lot more scalable. Microsoft was trying to figure out at the time, like, how do we make things scale, and how do we handle consumer internet for many millions of concurrent users? And so that was my first step. I then did some more work effort with that, and then I got a tap on the shoulder from some guys in the games group that I knew, and they were like, "Hey, we're going to go make a game console where it's going to be called the Direct Xbox, and it's going to have like an online gaming component, and you know quite a bit about how to run online services and scaling and that kind of stuff. How'd you like to come join this team?" Oh, sure, that sounds great. So I'd never been a game developer other than, like I told you, digging around on my TRS-80. But I was definitely, I played a lot of games, and so that's great. Here's a chance to get into the games industry. And yeah, I went over and joined the Xbox team, and it became the Xbox team. DirectX was the initial code name, and it got changed to Xbox. So I was an early member of that team. Mostly focused on making the Xbox Live gaming service. And I spent about 13 years in the Xbox division at Microsoft building, working on the console, the Xbox Live service. I then got into game development itself for an internal studio called Turn 10 Studios, and that did the Forza Motorsport racing game franchise. So if you like racing games, you've probably heard of that on Xbox. I was Gamertag Racer X. That's one of the first gamertags on Xbox Live. I used to play a lot of games.
Cool.
That's when I discovered the Bitcoin white paper. Like part of my role at Xbox Live was thinking about the security model, and there are internal mailing lists at Microsoft for employees to participate in, and I was on the security and cryptography email aliases, and there's all kinds of chatter going on those. And sure enough, at one point, the Bitcoin white paper gets passed around, people talking about it. At the time, I wasn't drawn to it for any of the monetary or economic aspects of it. What caught my eye was the solution that Satoshi Nakamoto had come up with for the Byzantine generals problem, which is like, how do you enforce and maintain consensus among disparate nodes that may or may not collude with or agree with each other natively? How do you enforce that without a centralized server? And I was looking at that in the context of like, oh, well, I mean, think about what an Xbox Live network is. It's a distributed network of nodes. Those are the consoles. It does have a centralized component, but where you play an online video game, all the participants in that game have to agree on things like the state of the game. Like if you're in a racing game, you have to agree that, okay, there's these 10 cars and these 10 positions on the track. And if this guy drives off the track, all the other consoles have to be aware of that and show it. And so how do you enforce that consensus and stop cheating? And so I was drawn to it like, oh, like, so this Bitcoin thing, it's like PayPal, but they're stopping cheating. Mm-hmm. And I looked at it from a gamer's lens. And it's funny, people joke like, oh, yeah, sure, you're in it for the tech. But that is actually what brought me into it. I was just intrigued by the technology. And I downloaded it, installed it, and played around with it quite a bit. Did a little bit of mining on it, figured out a couple ways to buy it. It was an interesting side project hobby for me. This was back in like, now we're like 2010, 2011. And it was a hobby. I was totally fascinated by it. And then in 2012, I ended up leaving Microsoft to go to a startup in Seattle called Tableau Software. It's a data visualization software. And when I did that, I got so busy. Just like you join a startup, you just go heads down, and all you're doing is thinking about that. And I just put all my Bitcoin stuff on the shelf. I didn't sell any of it or dump it or anything like that. I just like kind of packed it up in a shoebox, so to speak, and put it on the shelf and didn't think about it for 5 years.
Literally 5 years?
Well, because I went to this startup, and like at the time I joined, I had been thinking about taking a bit of a break, a sabbatical in 2012, and so I was going to just like check out of Microsoft for a while and just go goof off and relax for a bit before I figured out my next move. But I got this opportunity to go join this startup, and it's like, okay, geez, I'll do it, but only 5 years. I'm going to do 5 years, and I'm out. And I ended up, I left it exactly on my 5-year anniversary. I stuck to my plan. But as I'm getting ready to leave in 2016, I'm starting to pop my head up and look around and, okay, look, what else is on? Like, because I went full Rip Van Winkle mode, and I took a nap, and like while I slept, what had been happening out in the rest of the world with like, I knew Bitcoin was still alive. I'd heard about the Mt. Gox thing. I thankfully didn't have anything there at the time. But other than that, I didn't really follow Bitcoin much. I was just too busy. But in 2016, when I'm starting to get ready to check out of my job and take a break, that was a good time to realize, oh, wow, Bitcoin's still around. Holy moly, it's like $700 now. That's nuts. And I didn't have any intention of quitting my job to go deep on Bitcoin. I had this plan to quit my job, play with my kids, and just explore. And they ended up getting pulled hard back into the Bitcoin rabbit hole and learned all about it, or caught up basically, like refreshed the knowledge I already had, and then started going deeper on the things that I had maybe not ignored, but just wasn't aware of, like the economics aspects of it, the political aspects of it, things like that. And also at that time, like, meanwhile, while I had been sleeping, this thing called Ethereum had come up, and all these other altcoins had come into position. And so, like, well, what is this? Holy moly! So I spent a little bit of time looking at Ethereum. Quickly realized that this is not something that's going to scale. I'm not even sure if I wasn't even sure at the time if it was a problem that needed to be solved or could be solved this way. But I was intrigued by the idea of smart contracts, possibly. Spent a little bit of time messing around with that, but then got to the point where I had enough information to make an informed decision, and put Ethereum away and realized, nope, I'm just going to focus the remaining cycles I have on just learning more about Bitcoin, and that got me to where I am now.
Cool. And you are heading a meetup group or something, right?
Yeah. So I'd been a participant in the Seattle Bitcoin meetup, which had kind of devolved into just a general purpose blockchain meetup, as so many meetups have, I think, all over the world. And so you go in here and you think you want to learn about what's the current state of Bitcoin. And I went to a couple of Bitcoin meetups that were just blockchain meetups, and I wanted to learn more about like what's all this controversy about block size. Like I wanted to better understand that. What is everyone upset about? What are the different scaling approaches people are discussing? But it turned out to just you're going to like ICO pitches, or what evolved into ICO pitches, and all these different altcoin ideas. And okay, well that's not as interesting to me. And then I noticed that the Seattle Bitcoin meetup I got an email that the organizer had stepped down, and no one had stepped in to take it up again, and it had kind of gotten dormant because everyone had gone Ethereum crazy and started up other non-Bitcoin meetups. So I just said, okay, I'm going to step up and take over the Seattle Bitcoin meetup, and right away I just said, okay, this is Bitcoin only. Currently, it's very noob focused. So if someone has questions about, well, what's a private key anyway, and how do I store my Bitcoin? What's a good hardware wallet? And I try to give very rookie friendly explanations, and I give demos. I'll show like a Trezor one week or a cold card the next week, things like that. I'm going to try next to go a little bit higher level and show here's what Bitcoin Lightning is, and here's a demo of how that works, and why layer 1 and layer 2 are probably both necessary going forward, and how they help. Give demos like that. And then I just have been so busy. I've not had as many meetups as I would like. And I just recently, a couple of months ago, joined Casa. So that's been a really fun way for me to throw in full time. I'm trying to flip a hobby into a actual job.
All right. So this is your first job in the space.
Correct. Yeah, I've gone like from just general purpose and video game industry and data analytics tech nerd to trying to find a way to contribute to Bitcoin. I was drawn to Casa because I think they're going after trying to solve the problem of making Bitcoin easier to use. And by use, it's not just transact with, but also to store it, to custody it, to have an inheritance plan for when you pass on. How do you make sure your Bitcoin goes to your heirs? And right now, all these there are solutions for all these problems, but they're pretty, I'll just say, nerd focused. Like I can figure them out, but my non-nerd friends couldn't, or not easily anyway. And so I think that's where Bitcoin can really start improving in order to encourage more mass adoption, is just work out the user experience issues, or without sacrificing the things that make Bitcoin as special as it is, just put a different layer over it so that it's easier to interact with. And it's already been going that way. Like hardware wallets are getting much easier to use. There's really good mobile wallets coming out, seems like every week or so. Lightning is pretty complicated right now, but it's getting easier to use. And there's custody solutions that are coming out that make it easier for someone to securely store their Bitcoin without having to, be a complete security expert. You had Michael Flaxman on the other day. I heard that he gives a really good explanation of why multi-sig is probably the sweet spot right now for securing your Bitcoin.
Yeah, he sold me on it, and it's fun, or it's scary actually, listening to people like him. And I can't remember. It was Brian
Bishop, maybe.
Brian Bishop, exactly.
Yeah,
who both express like how frightening it is often to conduct Bitcoin transactions and how to do test transactions first. And I just hear other people like, so, oh, yes, I know everything works. I trust everything. And then the people who really know are just like, it's scary.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Like Bitcoin right now is very punishing if you get it wrong because it's irreversible. And I think that's a big hurdle. People have been just over the years through other products and services, I guess, lulled into a sense of it'll all work out and be okay because they have things like Venmo, PayPal, that aren't as high cost of failure ways to send money. And with Bitcoin, there is a high cost of getting it wrong. If you get your transactions wrong with your bank or PayPal, there's a path for you to get it back, so to speak. If you mess up in Bitcoin, you can't get it back. That's good and bad. And I think we just need to get folks changing their philosophy on how they think about being independent and self-sovereign. Like take some responsibility for your security, your data, your money, and don't be so reliant on these trusted third parties because those trusted third parties don't always work in your best interests.
Yeah, and I'd love to dig in on that, but I also want to backtrack a bit, and I don't know how much it's okay to talk about, but I'm really curious what went down to you basically getting this job. I mean, was there a courtship going? I mean, how did are you able to talk about that at all?
Yeah, sure. So with
Casa, yeah.
Yeah, so it's funny. When they were first getting off the ground, not that long ago, it's a pretty fledgling company by comparison to others. they had been talking about their key, what is now called their Keymaster product, and the thinking there is to have like a custody solution that is multi-sig, that is easier to use than other solutions like Electrum or just command line options, things like that. And I, at the time, was starting to look around like, okay, I'm not getting any younger. I'm going to die eventually. I need to have a better plan than what I currently do for my Bitcoin to be handed off to my heirs. And I've got what I would argue is a very secure solution, but it's not easily handed off to somebody who doesn't already know what they're doing. Like my plan was literally is currently I'm transitioning, relies very heavily on documents being handed to the right people at the right time, and we'll probably need a consultant to help them get through it, even though I've documented it to the best of my ability. So I was looking around for better ways to do it, and I'd heard about Casa. And so I'd actually met with Jeremy about becoming a customer for their Keymaster product. And we kept talking and talking, and it's one of those cliche things where I knew they had a Node product coming, and I just really liked the direction they were taking about bridging that gap between super nerdy tech and putting a better UX over it so that it was more accessible to others. And long story short, I just realized that this is a place where I want to contribute, and I got along with the team, and yeah, we just decided that this was a good marriage, so to speak. And so I am now on board as the product lead for the Casa Node. So we have several products, and I have a lot of interest in getting more folks up and running using Bitcoin full nodes and Lightning nodes. And so that was a natural place for me to lean in and help out.
Gotcha. So are you pretty much strictly on the node, or are you helping at all with Keymaster and other stuff like that?
My focus is on the node for now. Nick Newman is a counterpart of mine, and he is the product lead for Keymaster, SatsApp, et cetera. But because it's such a small company, we all are pretty in touch with what the other products are. It's not this big mega corporation like Microsoft where left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. And we are always looking for ways to, where it makes sense, integrate our products together and leverage each other. So it behooves us to really know what's going on with the other parts of it.
Cool. Well, as someone who loves Bitcoin hardware, anything from a Casacious coin to a hardware wallet or anything like that, Casa had come out, and with Jameson Lopp and Jeremy, it seemed like such a cool company. And then when they threw out the initial node, I was just like, oh my god, I don't know why it seems so great to me. Without I don't know, there's a lot of trust with the names behind it and the idea. I mean, I just as my wallet, I started a full node, and when it was pretty easy to load the whole blockchain and everything.
Yeah.
But at some point the chain got so bloated, and I pruned it, and just the hassles of keeping it on all the time. So I have something I can fire up on, and I do fire up from time to time on my main computer, but I don't keep it running. And now that it's pruned, I feel like it's slightly less
nodey,
less useful. Like I just don't feel like, I've got the entire blockchain here. Bottom line, just having a little device that you plug in, and it's completely separate from your computer and everything. Oops, shoot, I'm just knocking stuff off my
Whoops.
as I'm gesticulating. It just seemed very exciting to me. I was so tempted. I put it in the cart and just never pulled the trigger. So I haven't bought one yet.
Well, we got to fix that. We just announced the version 2, which is on a little bit better hardware. So maybe buy one and then get in the queue for when we start shipping them, hopefully later next month.
Yeah, are they still 300, or has that gone up yet?
I know we have a deal going on. The price if you buy now is 300, and it goes up to 399. So the way we're selling it is we don't actually sell the nodes. We sell a subscription.
So after a year, are you basically, if you don't want to continue, you send back the node, or how does
No, the node is yours to keep. So that's a common misconception. But the node is yours to keep. After a year, if you don't renew, of course, the node is yours to keep. We will still be sending regular security updates as needed for the device. So it'll be a fully functioning node for you until eventually the hardware dies someday. But the only what you lose is the support and the ability to call up and get handheld support with it.
Okay, so it sounds like a really good deal. How many hardware wallets do you get?
In our Casa Gold subscription, we give you a single Trezor hardware wallet, one, along with your Casa Node. We also include a Casa branded Faraday phone bag. So it's a nice little Faraday bag to store your phone in, block all signals. In our higher tiers, Diamond and Platinum, we up that to 3 hardware wallets. But even at the gold level subscription, you get the Node, a Trezor, and a Casa Faraday bag. It's a pretty good setup.
So just the hardware and the really good support.
It's a really good deal. Yeah, we think it's a really good deal. There are other folks out there that are putting together node solutions, and you can assemble them yourself. But of course, because it is a Raspberry Pi, we just believe that there's value in the software that we put on it and the service we provide in supporting you on your journey to use it.
Sure, and I guess just to spout them out here, I know there's like the Nodal or Nodal.
Yep.
I don't know how to pronounce that.
Nodal. Yeah, they make a really good product too. A little bit higher end, I would say, and that's reflected in the price. But for that price, you get a little bit beefier hardware and a little bit more responsive.
I've seen Lightning in a box. Is that?
I think that's one of them. Yeah, there are numerous people. There's the Raspberry Blitz folks. There's my Node. I know he's got an offering out there right now. So it's great. I mean, I'm all for these solutions. Like the more folks that through whatever mechanism learn to run a Bitcoin node, the better. And I'm just glad that we have all these folks out there that are making these offerings. And I'm glad that Casa is out there too.
The following message is sponsored by eToro, the official platform of the Bitcoin game. The best way to be smart about trading crypto is to use the smartest trading platform. That's why you should check out eToro. eToro is one of the largest trading platforms in the world, with over $1 trillion in trading volume on the platform per year. US customers can trade the most popular crypto assets, and if you're not ready to trade yet, you can practice building your portfolio with the eToro virtual trading feature. Best of all, you can connect with 11 million other eToro traders around the world to discuss trading, charts, and all things Bitcoin. Create an account today by going to b.tc/eToro game. That's b.tc/eToro game. Build your crypto portfolio the smart way. eToro is crypto trading made easy. What are the changes between the original and the second node?
The first node was a Raspberry Pi 3 and a mechanical hard drive. So that was just like a sweet spot we were trying to hit with price point. Pros and cons to that approach. We was able to keep the price a little lower, but the cons are Raspberry Pi 3 was a little underpowered and didn't give much ability to extend it to run other things. It performs fine as a Bitcoin node and a Lightning node, but that's about it. It'd be really hard to run other things on it like an Electrum server or a Block Explorer or really anything else. It was kind of limited. And also having a mechanical hard drive on there it's a little cheaper, but it's slower too. Like SSDs are the way to go for any kind of performance. And so the biggest changes we've made for Node 2 are going to the Raspberry Pi 4 Model B with 4 gigs of RAM and an SSD. And so that gives us a lot more options for extending it down the road. We're going to start off with, of course, it's going to do all the original things like a Bitcoin full node and a Lightning full node, but now we have extra capacity and extra resources to play with. So we can do things like a BTC Pay server, maybe Electrum, maybe a Block Explorer, as well as, maybe non-Bitcoin specific things. Like Casa's mission is not just to go after Bitcoin, it's to increase self-sovereignty and safety for folks. And if you think about that, our mission is not just to help people be empowered with their money, although that's part of it. But if we could have, like, say, a VPN service running on the node, or being able to manage your own identity server on a node too, like all these things would help to advance our mission of increasing users' self-sovereignty and safety. And I think we make the first step with a Bitcoin node because that's a very important part of your self-sovereignty, is being able to be in control of your own money. And we help you do that with Bitcoin. But I think now that we have a little bit more power under the hood, so to speak, we have a lot more options for going forward.
So you mentioned Electrum and a Block Explorer, but so those are maybe coming, or what do we got now?
Yeah, we're looking at it. We've already announced that we're going to put BTC Pay server on there pretty early after we launch. That will allow folks to easily act as a merchant and receive Bitcoin on their BTC Pay server. Right? Like, there's a lot of stores like where now you can buy like Bitcoin merchants accepting Bitcoin, and a lot of times under the hood, it's a BTC Pay server that's actually being used to handle the invoice and accept the payments.
Yeah, I love that's going to be on there too. I think I once asked about that.
Yeah, and then like a block explorer, the idea of a block explorer locally on your node versus trusting one on a web server or on some other server on the internet, just being able to, rather than maybe give away some privacy by searching for Bitcoin transactions on a centralized third-party server, you could argue that that's not as safe, because if I'm searching for this address on a public block explorer, well, people are probably going to be able to say like, oh, well, someone from this IP address at this time from this location was searching for that address. Well, whoever is associated with that IP address is probably the owner of that address, or at least why else is he interested in that transaction? And so you've basically given away some privacy by doing that. And some trust. But if you have a block explorer that is local on your network, on your node, pointing at your copy of the blockchain in your house, it's never making a trip off your local network. It's not leaving the network. And so you're not giving away the privacy. No one else can be like looking at that traffic and seeing that, oh, they don't know what address you searched for or what transaction you looked at.
Well, you're preaching to the choir on this. I just want to know. So is that going to be on there? When's that coming?
Definitely on our list. I honestly don't have a firm date for when we'll do it, but that is definitely like in the top 3 requests we get. And it's a pretty easy win to do. We just have to figure out the right way to do it.
Okay. I mean, that's all what I would think. It wouldn't be crazy hard. But okay, because that's a huge selling point to me personally.
Yeah. So one of the things you need to do to run a block explorer, by default, if you just go and download Bitcoin Core, out of the box, it doesn't have a full index, which is required to run a block explorer. So there are some performance and capacity hits you got to take. You got to run a full index. None of this is insurmountable. We just need to make.
Uh-oh.
Let's just keep going.
All right.
Yeah, we lost my audio, but I think we're still going.
Yeah, we are. I think it's just different mic. Okay, so and just a curiosity, technically with the disk performance with the solid state drive, what are the biggest things that need the rapid disk access?
Every time a new block is downloaded, it's being verified by your node. And also, when you operate a full node, you have your copy of the mempool in RAM. And so if you have a faster CPU, more memory, and a better hard drive, your node will be more responsive.
Okay, just generally more responsive. There's not...
Right. And then just like clicking around, opening channels, making transactions, running a block explorer. I would not want to go back to the days of running a block explorer on older equipment with an old mechanical spindle drive, just because as you're walking through the transactions, you're having to do all these reads and writes, and the faster the drive is, the faster that turnaround is.
Okay. And as far as network traffic, and is that going to be anything noticeable to the average Joe with a standard ISP?
That's a good question. So I am spoiled in my own home because I have unlimited internet access. But for folks with caps, like monthly caps, the Bitcoin blockchain is hundreds of gigabytes, and so to download from zero, you need to be aware of that you might run into some of your caps. That's one of the reasons that we by default ship the node preloaded with the blockchain, just to save folks that long, lengthy, and potentially cap ruining download. Folks have the option, if they don't want to trust us, they can hit reset start from scratch, and it will blank that copy that we sent with it and download it from the blockchain or from the internet, not trusting us. But yeah, that is a consideration, and that's one of the reasons that we ship by default with a copy of the Bitcoin blockchain already on the drive.
So other than getting caught up with the blockchain, there's nothing really that data heavy as far as traffic goes?
No, the Lightning Network takes up a little bit of additional bandwidth, and then anything you run that calls out to the open internet will impact your bandwidth. But not more so than just regular web browsing.
And could I send this to my grandma, or does it have to be, my uncle? Like, what do you have to know to be able to run a node?
We do strive to make it as easy to use as possible. So we strive for a very good out-of-the-box experience, plugging it in with a wizard to walk you through it. I definitely think ours is the, if not the easiest, it's one of the easiest ways to get started with a Bitcoin full node. And we're always trying to make it easier. So I'll be interested to see, what's your experience with it when you go through it. The out of the box experience, like are there things that we are assuming are simple that maybe aren't? I would love to hear the feedback. We always like to hear the feedback.
I'm the guy. I complain about everything I think isn't right. So, okay. Oh, you might be sorry you said that.
No, this is what we're going for. So here's the challenge is like anytime you become experienced with something, you get more adept at it, but you just naturally lose some empathy for where you were before and where other newcomers are coming in. And it's important to be reminded that a lot of people aren't at your level of time in the game, and it might not be natively understandable to them. And so you have to consistently water your empathy trees so you never forget that not everyone understands this stuff as easily as you do. And that's a constant challenge I try to keep myself and others thinking of on the team. Like, hey, don't forget that not everyone understands this stuff as easily as you do.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, it's good to know your ears are open.
Absolutely.
Do you want to talk about security on the node?
Sure. Sure.
Okay. And so what was really unfortunate is it seemed like right after we were discussing getting this together, there came a big kerfluffle from J.W. Weatherman saying basically two reasons he didn't feel that the node was secure or needed to be changed and stuff. I don't know if do you want to review those two things?
Sure. I mean, just in general, though, there's two basic ethoses for security. One is, there's only binary solutions to security. Either something is completely secure or it's not, and there's no middle ground. And then there's the I would say more pragmatic approach where have an appropriate security solution depending on your threat model and know what your threat model really is. And that can then help you design an appropriate security solution. And so some of the complaints that we've heard about the node from, not just this one individual, but over from others as well, is, you could do this differently. You could do this more securely. And we're aware of that. But we also made deliberate design decisions to favor usability a bit more at the expense of some more robust security in some situations. But to be clear, we're not suggesting that the Casa Node in its current format be used for large sums of storing money or more large sums of Bitcoin. It is designed to be for, say, $50, $100 worth of Bitcoin. It's designed to be run on your home network. It's not a rugged, robust enterprise class device designed to withstand a much higher threat model. And so I think it's easy to get caught up in religious wars about how much security is appropriate while ignoring, well, what threat model are you really operating under? Like, for example, sure, if I carry my $100 bill in my wallet walking around in the world, it's probably more secure. It's probably secure enough if I carry it around in my front pocket, maybe a little less secure if it's in my back pocket, because then a pickpocket could get it a little more easily. And then when I walk in my door in my house, I can take my wallet out of my pocket and, put it on a dresser drawer in my bedroom within my home. And is that as secure as having it in my front pocket? No, but it's inside my house. And if it's $100, I'm probably going to be okay with that security of having my wallet in a known location in my house. So that's an example of like using appropriate security for the threat model you're operating under.
Gotcha. And I mean, I don't know. I thought I could see both sides, but I was fairly sympathetic to my understanding of the, I guess, secure connection to the node required a self-signed certificate, which would have brought up all kinds of bells and whistles for most browsers. Is that kind of correct?
The specific concern was the way you access the node is via a browser pointing at the node on your home network, not over the open internet, but on your home network over HTTP, not HTTPS. And the common call out was, well, why don't you use HTTPS instead? Because that's what people have been trained, rightfully so, to use on the open internet, have an encrypted end-to-end connection. The challenge, unfortunately, and this is not just Casa's issue, is that it's really hard to get an HTTPS connection on an internal connection. So I tried to cover that in the blog post that Jameson and I put together to have like a certificate that enables an SSL connection is a trickier solution or trickier problem to solve than people realize. We are looking at other ways to address the problem, but in the meantime, we decided it was an acceptable level of risk to have HTTP connection to the node within your home network.
Yeah, no, understandable. And does it have to do with certificates for your SSL? Is that the bottom line?
Yeah. So the way SSL works is when you point your browser at securesite.com on the open internet, and your browser tries to negotiate a secure connection by checking the certificates on either end, and if it cannot reconcile the domain name and IP address for that endpoint with what's called a CA, a certificate authority. If it can't validate that with a CA, it will not give you an SSL connection. That's how it works on the open internet. The problem comes from trying to run SSL internally. The only way you can do it is to have it. You can get a CA, but if I'm trying to help you, the customer, I don't know your IP address at your house. I don't know your domain name at your house because you're running on a non-public network. So it's pretty hard for me, Casa, to know what your certificate will need to be. So then that pushes the problem to the customer, and that customer would then have to use what's called a self-signed certificate, where you go out on your own because you know your private IP address, your domain name, what have you. You could get a self-signed certificate, which gets us, okay, and then you've got that problem solved. Then the next problem is modern web browsers throw horrible looking warning messages saying, hey, look, this is a self-signed certificate. It's not approved by a CA, and so I'm going to throw these warnings. And so if you're a non-technical user and you go through all this, your web browser is still shrieking at you that you have an unsecure connection. So there are currently no really good, easy solutions right now. And this is why, like, your home internet router likely has an admin page if you want to hit it to configure your home internet connection. You're likely hitting that over HTTP, not HTTPS, for that same reason.
That sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah, we are looking at, there are different approaches that could be taken. We just need to make sure that whatever solution we come up with is not overly cumbersome, that it's not so cumbersome that it makes the product unusable. So you're always trying to walk a fine line between appropriate level of security without sacrificing functionality and or usability.
All right, and just so we talk about it, I think the second thing was that there's kind of like, is there a master password or password that Casa knows that help you guys get into a node? Or
so that was a reference to if you enable SSH, which is your secure shell on the node, which we ship with it off. Like by default, out of the box, the Casa node has no SSH enabled on it at all. On some occasions, we have customers that reach out to us and they want to do a customer support call, and we help them if they want to do this, enable SSH. So first you have to plug in a keyboard, a monitor, and a mouse such that you can log in directly to the node. You're not connecting to this thing over even a browser at this point. Once you've got your keyboard and a monitor hooked up, you can type commands. We'll tell you how to do it. We have a blog post, and it does. Once you enable SSH, you can then connect to it from your laptop over your network in your home network only, using the password that we've put on the box.
Gotcha. So you got to enable that. That's
You have to enable it. Once you've enabled it, it's fully within your power to change that password, and we tell customers that's possible to do. However, once you do that, we don't know it, and if you lose it, you are locked out of your node, and there's nothing we can do about it. So, for these reasons and more, we don't ship with SSH enabled at all, and we only talk a customer through how to enable it if they are comfortable doing so. And we never have direct access to the box in any of these situations. This is just to allow the user to access it from their own laptop or wherever on their home network.
Okay. So obviously I'm no security researcher or not as technical as JW, but I don't know. I think you defanged those issues pretty well for me. So
yeah, well, and it's like this isn't something we're trying to discount completely at all. I mean, we're just trying to clarify what is and isn't fact about some of the things that were called out.
Sure. So how do the Trezors come into play with security? What's that all about?
This is separate from the node. So the Trezors can be used as part of a multi-sig storage solution with our Keymaster product. So with Keymaster, you can start off on under our gold subscription with a 2 of 3. Where that's 2 or 3 multi-sig. You probably talked about this quite a bit with Michael Waxman. And one key is held on the mobile device, and X amount of other keys could be held on the hardware wallets. So that gives you the ability to set up a 2 of 3, where you have one key on your mobile and another key on a Trezor, which you store in one location, another Trezor, it could be in a different location. And then you need any 2 of those 3 can be used to sign a transaction.
Gotcha. So I guess this is not using partially signed Bitcoin transactions? Is it some other?
We're working towards that. We want to enable Cold Card, which is one of the early hardware wallets that supports PBSTs, or PSBTs. Sorry, I mixed that up.
What's the difference between standard multi-sig and using partially signed Bitcoin transactions?
The two are different concepts, really. So you can have multi-sig with or without partially signed. The partially signed allows you to do something without being connected to the internet. You can partially sign something on an offline air-gapped cold card, and then bring that partially signed transaction on an SD card, for example. Go to, like right now you can do it with Electrum, and then broadcast it. Then that could be used as part of a multi-sig.
So I guess I was just forgetting, you're not just getting a node, you're also getting the Keymaster Gold. Is that right?
Correct. So when you buy a Casa Gold subscription, you get a node, you get support for it. If you keep your subscription current, you'll get subsequent versions of the node when they release. So for our customers that bought our first node, if they are renewing their gold subscription, they get node 2 when we start shipping it, and we'll continue that model going forward.
Great. So when do you think you're shipping?
Working on it as fast as we can.
No estimate?
I am targeting end of November, early December.
Okay.
We definitely want to hit Christmas. We want to make sure that people can get nodes for Christmas.
Gotcha. So as long as you pre-order, you can get the $300 for the first year? Or
Correct. Yeah. I believe we're running that through the end of October.
And I'm even trying to remember, was it even beyond the first year you get that deal?
I think once you lock in, you can renew at that.
All right.
Yeah, you keep it current. I'm just glad that both us and other folks out there in the space are making it super easy to run nodes. Like, if you compare the state of hardware, gadgets, and software tools now versus when I first tripped into Bitcoin, it is infinitely easier now and getting easier all the time. So that to me is the most exciting thing. And I'm just so happy to see people coming into Bitcoin today are going to have it so much easier than when like you and I got into it. And it's just going to continue to get easier and easier to use. I think mobile wallets are becoming amazing. I think hardware wallets are getting better all the time. Nodes are becoming easier to use and to operate. It's a good time.
Can I dig in a little bit more about the Lightning and not BitPay, BTC Pay?
Sure.
Yeah, the reaction to BitPay. How active they have to be with channel management and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I don't think we have a really good, not just Casa, but anybody. We're still learning what the optimum channel management strategies are. I don't know if you've set up a Lightning node on your own before or heard of the autopilot. That's something that LND has. The idea there is to increase liquidity, and by that, like, make it easier for you to send and receive a Lightning payment by automatically reaching out and finding other channel partners to negotiate a channel with. I think over time that'll become, people will design different approaches to that. And this is something that, like, Casa is not a developer of the Lightning protocol. We rely on the LND implementation of Lightning right now. That's the one we include in the box. And so it's really interesting to follow along with what, like, the LND team is working on, as well as the C Lightning implementation. And I don't know if you noticed, but just a couple of days ago, Electrum announced that they're going to do their own implementation of Lightning written in Python. So I'm really interested to see what they come up with there. Like, what will their approach be? And we're going to have more players in that space. But then, to get back to your question about channel management, I think the jury's still out on what the optimal channel management strategy really is. Like, ideally, you want to be able to send and receive a payment. If you have a fixed number of partners that you're likely to be trading with, well, sure, you're going to want a channel open with them and have it properly balanced. But if you just want, like, general reachability and routability of payments, I think it's TBD what the optimal channel strategy is.
Okay.
And that'll be evolving over time.
Okay. And LND is Lightning Labs?
Correct. They're the lead team that's contributing to LND.
And how do you make the choice which implementation to run?
The choice was made before I arrived at Casa, but I do know that both of them, I think the lead two right now are LND and C Lightning. And I think the decision was made just because it was easier to work with at the time.
Okay, great. Wow. I can't think of any more pressing questions.
Well, so it's like let's ask you some questions. Like, what are the things that you find most intriguing or frustrating about the Bitcoin space and Lightning too?
Oh man. Well, Lightning has been intimidating to me. Lightning Labs came out with some kind of a little app that I ran on my Mac that was just on testnet. And I played around with that a little bit and was able to, do something.
The Lightning Wallet, I think they called it.
All right. And it's funny, I'd done it just because, I sell some different random things. I was really caught in Lightning fever around that time. And I just wanted to be part of it. This is a little bit before the Lightning Trust Torch started getting passed around and all that stuff. So I was totally into it and wanting to participate. And, I've also Zap Wallet. I know I've loaded that. I've loaded various wallets and played with them a bit, but never, I ended up settling on custodial wallets and using them a bit because it just seemed easier. And I guess and that's a question for you too, I guess. How do you feel about custodial wallets right now?
Yeah, that's a classic question. I mean, obviously they're more performant because they're able to make that trade-off. They're trading off validating a transaction against its own node for speed. Like, if you think about the sliding scale of performance versus security, the slickest mobile pay solution on earth right now is Apple Pay. But what they're doing, though, is like, that's using traditional fiat banking. You're connecting up to your checking account, and as the other side is too. And Apple's just kind of caching it, and then they'll settle up with the banks later. But it is a very seamless experience, and I think that analogy travels well to custodial versus non-custodial wallets. A custodial wallet is you're trusting somebody else that's custodying the final validation of the transaction because it's running on their node, whereas a non-custodial wallet in whatever form is making sure to only trust your node. And good examples of that are like the Zap wallet. You can configure that to reach out to talk to your node at your house, running at your house. We have that solution right now with our Sats app, which lets you communicate with your node over Tor back in your home network. And so we are trying to walk that line between make sure it's fast enough, but don't trust another node. Trust your own node.
To me, I feel like in these times where Lightning is still a bit tricky for a lot of, people, like I personally don't see there's anything wrong with a custodial Lightning wallet for low amounts of money just to play around. And I'm fully on board with second layer solutions eventually becoming easy to use, but maybe right now just the more bold people are really hands-on running nodes and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I think over time it's going to become less cumbersome to learn how it works. Like I can't with a straight face say Lightning's easy to use right now. It's just not. But I think over time we'll get to a point where you'll have a mobile wallet on your phone, and rather than delineate between Bitcoin and Lightning, that'll be kind of abstracted away. It'll just be pick someone that you want to send something to, like, oh, I'll find Rob Mitchell in my contacts list, whatever, and generate an address for that guy. How much do you want to send? And it'll be smart enough to know, like, okay, well, look at fees right now on the network. Are fees for the main chain low? Well, and you're sending $100? Okay, we'll just use the main chain if it's really low. But then if you're in a high fee situation and you're only trying to send like $5 worth, well, then use Lightning. But don't make me choose that at the time. The wallet should be smart enough to dynamically do that on its own, and I think we'll get there.
Yeah, I do too. It's all just a matter of time, I think, before all these problems are worked out.
Yeah.
Hey, and I guess another chance to talk about something. I've heard everyone talking about the Sats app. What is that?
The idea with Sats app is make it as easy to send Bitcoin as it is to send a text message. You can send, of course, you can send to a standard Lightning address or a Bitcoin address. But if you've gone the next step and created a Sats tag, I can send it to you at your Sats tag. And the transaction is managed on your mobile phone with our app, either on Android or iOS. But you've connected that to your Casa node back home. So you're using the Lightning network, using channels that your node back home has opened and managed. But you're able to use your Sats app to do the remote controlling of it, to drive it from wherever you are. And we use Tor to get through the network to do that.
So can only node owners play in this domain, or is this open source and other people are able to do this too?
We haven't open source Sats app yet. So right now that does pair nicely with our node only. It is unique to Casa.
Walled garden.
Yeah, a little.
All right. So, for some reason I thought like people were somehow getting free sats with the app too, doing something, or is that?
We do a program called the Heartbeat. So we have a little mini game almost where if you use your Sats app on your phone to confirm your connection to your node, we run a little heartbeat check. Is it able to talk to your node? Do you have a valid connection? Are you still able to log in and do it? You do that 5 days out of 7 in a given week, and we give you 10,000 Satoshis right now. So it's a fun little game. So if you keep your streak, if you get 5 in a row, any 5 in a row in a week out of 7, you get 10,000 Satoshis.
Okay, so I might be dense, but I'm not seeing why you guys want people to do this.
It's kind of a fun way to get people to think about using their nodes. And so for us, it's a bit of just a community engagement thing. We're obviously not making money by doing that, but it makes it fun for folks to stay engaged with running their own node.
Gotcha. And so when does the kind of discount end? Is that when it ships, or how long can people get the $300 deal?
So we're running that until the end of October, and then after that it goes to $399 for a Casa Gold membership.
Gotcha. Well, it looks like I've still got a little bit of time, so that's definitely a motivating factor, having that lower price for a bit. So
let's get you set up, yeah.
All right. Well, I think getting involved with Casa is probably a good thing. I love all these exciting companies, and what a way to bank on your future is involved with a company like Casa. So
exactly, it's a really good team, and I love the mission that we're on. Great people working there, and I like the products that we're building. I think if us and other companies in this space continue on this path, it becomes much, much easier to onboard new people and for existing people to enjoy Bitcoin.
So I guess you want to give email addresses or Twitter handles or websites?
Yeah, sure. So of course you can find me personally on Twitter at Brian Lockhart, one word. I'm not one of those anonymous guys, never have been, maybe should be, but I'm just not. And then, of course, at Casa Hodl is a good place to follow us on Twitter, and at keys.casa online for Casa. And look for the advancements we're making with nodes and with Keymaster, and would love to talk to you if you have any questions.
Great. Well, thanks so much for your time, Brian.
Sure thing. Yeah, it was good talking to you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Bitcoin Game. I hope it didn't bug anyone too much that I exposed myself as being a bit of a Casa fanboy. Why do you think I have this podcast? So I can fanboy. Check out this episode's show notes page by going to thebitcoingame.com and looking for episode 71. You'll find tons of links to topics discussed in the interview. Wow, I almost forgot. I've now been podcasting about Bitcoin for over 5 years, and I think there's just a handful of people who can say that. If you haven't listened to any past episodes, I think I've got some really good historical pieces, a couple of exclusive interviews. 2 interviews I'd recommend are one from a number of years back with Peter Todd, or not so far back with Adam Back, where we really go through in an entire episode his pre-Bitcoin history. Say hi to me on Twitter. I'm the BTC Game. See you next time.